So, um, imagine treating your daily energy like, I don't know, a bank account. You sit down on a Sunday, and you meticulously budget 8 hours for sleep, an hour for exercise, perfectly portioned meals.
Right, you've got your ideal macros all mapped out.
Exactly. But then, well, a random Tuesday happens, your knee spasms,
Yeah.
or a work project drags on late. The weather turns.
Yeah, life gets in the way.
And by 9 p.m., you are financially and physically bankrupt. Just like eating fast food over the sink to feel something.
Oh, we have all been there.
Right. So today we're doing a deep dive into this masterclass on what happens when the perfect, pristine habit tracking system just collides head-on with the chaotic reality of being human.
Such a fascinating topic.
It really is. Our source today is a personal journal from late June 2026. It's by an author named Ang, and it's titled the 2026 Mid-Year Review of Health, Habits, and Hobbies. And this covers week 26 specifically.
And I think if you're someone who uses, fitness trackers or those habit apps that feel like they're actively mocking you from your home screen, really going to want to hear this.
Oh, absolutely. We're exploring that constant tug of war between entropy and control, and why, honestly, missing your goals actually gives you the best data of all.
Yeah, because it's an incredibly grounding document. I mean, often when people share their quantified self-data, like their sleep scores or workout streaks, it acts as this idealized highlight reel.
Like they're just flexing on the internet.
Right, exactly. But Ang's journal is, well, it's a forensic accounting of a human energy budget dealing with constant interference. It tracks sleep, steps, diet ratios, coding commits, and even these little micro hobbies.
And all with the explicit purpose of figuring out how to adapt when the original plan inevitably fails.
Which it always does.
So let's start with the internal bodily chaos, specifically the health ledger for this specific week. Ang's goal is a solid 6 to 8 hours of sleep. But the daily average for the week dropped from 6.9 hours to 6.1 hours.
Which is a pretty significant drop when you're tracking it that closely.
It really is. And the journal tracks exactly why.
Yeah.
It wasn't some mysterious insomnia. Ang got deeply occupied with personal coding projects over the weekend.
The classic weekend rabbit hole.
Exactly. And that pushed dinner late. And then, well, that late digestion ended up heavily fragmenting the sleep cycle.
And see, the causal chain here is what makes the tracking so worthwhile. We so often treat our daily actions in isolation,
Yeah, we totally do.
We tell ourselves that staying up late to code is one event, and then waking up with back pain is this separate, totally unrelated event. But Ang's meticulous tracking just strips away that illusion.
So the late coding triggers the late dinner.
Right. The digestion disrupts the deep sleep phases, and the lack of deep sleep stalls the body's physical recovery. Ang specifically notes dealing with relapsed knee and back injuries.
Ouch.
Yeah. And anything less than 7 to 8 hours of sleep results in this distinct, tingling discomfort in those joints.
Oh, wow. I mean, think of your sleep like the body's overnight IT department. They come in when the conscious mind logs off. They run the security patches, they defragment the hard drives, and crucially, they repair the physical hardware.
That is a great way to look at it.
But when you constantly cut their hours, dropping from nearly 7 hours to barely 6, the maintenance simply doesn't get finished. The physical servers, so Ang's knee and back, literally start crashing and sending out these error signals.
Right, which manifest as the tingling and muscle spasms.
But okay, I have to play devil's advocate here for a second. When you're tracking every single hour of sleep and mapping it directly to every muscle spasm, doesn't that hyperfixation actually create more stress? I mean, it sounds exhausting.
It might sound exhausting, but psychologically it actually shifts you from being a victim to being a manager.
Oh, interesting. How so?
Well, when you don't track your habits, a sudden back spasm feels like this random, unfair punishment from the universe. You just feel helpless. But by tracking the data, Ang removes the mystery.
Ah, so you look at the ledger and realize, oh, I just underfunded the sleep budget for 3 days.
Exactly. So the tissue repair was halted. It replaces anxiety with a sense of agency. I mean, you can't manage a system if you refuse to look at the metrics.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And that pragmatic approach applies directly to the diet as well.
Mm-hmm.
The journal lays out these incredibly ambitious nutritional goals, like intermittent fasting with a 16-8 window, aiming for 70% fullness, 2 to 3 servings of sardines a week.
Very specific.
Extremely. And a strict 2-1-1 diet ratio. So that's 2 parts plants, 1 part protein, 1 part carbs.
That is a rigorous plan. How did it hold up?
Well, over the course of the week, Ang's weight bumped up slightly, from 69.72 to 70.10 kilograms, probably from some sugary drinks and late fast food, and the 2-1-1 ratio. Aang admits that most days it looked a lot more like a 1-2-2 ratio.
Oh, so double the carbs and protein and half the plants.
Yep. But the context for that slip is entirely environmental. Finding food that fits a strict, plant-heavy 2-1-1 ratio when you're traveling on an empty stomach is practically impossible.
Right. The system didn't break down because of a moral failure or lack of willpower. It broke down because travel creates a massive vulnerability in nutritional availability. Airports and highway rest stops are just not optimized for plant-based macronutrient balancing.
They really aren't. And, nature throwing unexpected chaos at us is one type of entropy, but it doesn't just happen internally. The domino effect of bodily health is constantly colliding with the physical environment, too.
Oh, definitely. And this week was a perfect example of that.
Right, because during this specific week in late June, the weather went entirely off script. It was supposed to be the peak of a heat wave, but instead there were these sporadic, heavy downpours.
Which completely derailed the outdoor plans.
Exactly. The outdoor swimming plans were instantly postponed. Home improvement projects like doing grout work on the balcony tiles and installing new curtains, they all had to be delayed. Even the gardening was reduced to just light chores between rainstorms.
Yet, despite the torrential rain and those relapse knee spasms we just talked about, Aang still managed a high step average for the week. Around 5,705 steps daily.
Wait, really? With a bad knee?
Yeah, and on one particular day, crossed the 10,000 step mark entirely through daily chores and necessary travel. The journal notes this crucial realization that prolonged sitting was actually making the knee injury worse.
Oh, wow.
So moving around and getting those steps in was an active adaptation to the pain.
See, that specific detail really challenged my understanding of recovery. If you have a relapsed knee injury, walking 10,000 steps sounds like the exact opposite of rest.
Right, because we are culturally conditioned to view rest as lying completely horizontal on a couch, doing absolutely nothing, just waiting for the body to magically heal.
Yeah, but Aang is treating rest as a dynamic state.
Because biologically, dynamic rest is often far more effective. The physiology of a knee joint actually relies on movement to heal. When you sit completely still for hours, the tissues stiffen, and the synovial fluid, which is what lubricates the joint, it just isn't circulating.
So walking acts as like a mechanical pump.
Exactly, driving blood flow and nutrients into the damaged tissues while clearing out inflammation. And by combining those 10,000 steps with targeted heat pads and moderate strength training to rebuild the surrounding leg muscles, Aang is engaging in active recovery.
It's a negotiation with the injury rather than a surrender to it.
Beautifully put, yes.
But it requires an intense level of mindfulness to walk that line between active recovery and overexertion. Which brings me to another point of friction in the journal. Aang maintains a daily meditation habit, but it's tracked meticulously, like 1 to 3 minutes of sitting meditation, walking meditation while raking leaves, and a practice called mental noting. Tracking 1 to 3 minute bursts of mindfulness on a spreadsheet feels kind of contradictory. Doesn't turning a Zen practice into a quantified metric defeat the entire purpose of meditation?
Not necessarily if you view it through the lens of Stoicism, which Aang explicitly references. The goal of that 1 to 3 minute meditation isn't to reach enlightenment on a mountaintop,
Okay, what is it then?
It's to execute a quick psychological reset. It's an incremental tweak. By tracking those short bursts, Aang ensures that mindfulness remains a daily utility, not just some vague aspiration. It builds the mental resilience needed to look at a derailed swimming plan or a spike in back pain and remain, as the journal puts it, stoic as usual.
Stoic as usual. I love that. And a stoic mindset is definitely required for where the journal takes us next. We've talked about the chaos of the physical environment, but Aang is simultaneously navigating an environment that is far more turbulent, which is the digital world in 2026.
Oh, yeah. The AI flood.
Exactly. The journal transitions from tracking steps and diet to analyzing reading, writing, and coding habits. And the boundary Aang is drawing against the flood of artificial intelligence is just fascinating.
It is a profound look at the tension between human curation and automated creation. Generating content in 2026 is, well, it's virtually frictionless.
But Aang, who aims to write 3 posts daily, draws a hard line. AI is strictly limited to the role of a proofreader, checking grammar, spelling, and basic word choice.
Right, but the core drafting, the idea generation, and that stylistic voice remain entirely manual.
Aang is intentionally preserving the friction of the writing process to protect their distinct voice. And that philosophy extends directly into their coding work, too.
Yeah, the GitHub stuff is really interesting.
So Aang originally planned to submit several PRs, pull requests, to update continuous integration for major open-source backend languages, specifically Elixir 1.20 and Erlang OTP 29.
Right, and for anyone not elbow deep in software development, these are heavy-duty programming languages used to run massive, complex systems.
Right, and continuous integration is basically the automated quality control process that tests new code. But Aang skipped all of it. Instead of updating these systems, Aang just browsed random GitHub repositories and made this chilling observation.
The prediction Aang makes is that GitHub, which has historically been the central collaborative town square for human developers, is rapidly devolving into a dump ground for AI-generated throwaway projects.
It's a brilliant analogy.
Yeah.
I mean, imagine walking into a beautiful historic public library. You expect to find shelves full of carefully authored, intentionally crafted books, but instead you discover that 90% of the building is stuffed to the ceiling with randomly generated pamphlets that a machine spat out overnight.
Yeah, it's a landfill of synthetic noise.
So what is the human response to that? Aang completely pivots. They retreat from the automated public square and dive into a highly complex, intensely personal coding project instead.
Right, specifically a pet project written in Haskell focused on text normalization and transformation for Chinese, Japanese, and Korean text. CJK text.
But why Haskell? I mean, what does that represent?
Well, it is crucial to understand what Haskell represents in the programming world. It is notoriously complex, mathematical, and rigid. It does not hold your hand, and there are no easy shortcuts.
I see.
You cannot easily outsource Haskell architecture to an AI without deeply understanding the underlying logic.
So friction is actually the point.
Precisely. By choosing a deeply complex puzzle that has fascinated them since their youth and tackling it in a language that demands rigorous human cognition, Aang is staging this quiet rebellion against the frictionless AI flood.
It's an act of intellectual craftsmanship.
Exactly. When the digital world prioritizes massive automated volume, engaging in a difficult, hyper-niche personal project reasserts your intellectual humanity.
Wow. And that pivot away from hyper-optimization shows up in their reading habits, too. Aang explicitly notes pausing a practical health guide called 3 Highs just to read fiction sporadically instead.
Which is such a deliberate step back from always trying to optimize the human machine, choosing instead to just enjoy a story.
Right. Because in an age where the internet feels entirely automated and frictionless, the only things with real value are the things that require friction and physical presence.
Which serves as the perfect bridge to the final section of the journal, the physical micro-hobbies. The rejection of mass-produced, frictionless digital content leads Aang directly into these hyper-specific, tactile activities that demand a profoundly human touch.
Let's look at the photography note. Aang goes on several unplanned photo walks in different towns, and after a long time of planning and evaluating, Aang finally gets their hands on a specific mirrorless camera they wanted to try, but they immediately reject it.
The image sensor was fine, the technical specs were great, but Aang rejected the camera purely because the ergonomics were not suitable.
I love this. Ergonomics is the science of how a tool physically interfaces with the human body. A spreadsheet tracking technical specifications cannot measure how a grip feels in your palm.
Right. An AI cannot tell you if the weight distribution of a lens strains your wrist. Aang prioritizes the physical, tactile reality of the tool over its theoretical performance on paper.
There is an incredible paradox here. How many of us just buy the newest phone or mouse or keyboard because it has the best reviews or the fastest processor, totally ignoring the fact that it cramps our hands during daily use?
Oh, all the time. We force our human biology to adapt to a flat piece of glass or a poorly shaped piece of plastic.
But Aang refused to do that. If the camera didn't physically fit their hand, it was useless. But then, right after rejecting a beautifully engineered piece of high-end consumer technology, Aang turns around and happily spends time breeding fish in pieces of literal garbage.
The EPS foam boxes.
Yes. Aang takes field trips to local fish stores to stock these outdoor ponds situated on their backyard balcony. But the ponds are just expanded polystyrene, basically those cheap disposable styrofoam coolers you'd take to a picnic.
Yeah, and Aang repurposes them into DIY aquatic ecosystems to breed cichlids. And the journal explicitly mentions that Aang is actively experimenting to create individual microclimates within each of these foam boxes.
It is the ultimate anti-aesthetic pro-function environment. To create a functioning microclimate in a styrofoam box, you have to measure the pH of the water, monitor the ammonia levels, balance the temperature against the chaotic weather happening outside.
You cannot outsource the survival of those fish to an app. You have to be physically present. You have to literally dip your hands in the water.
The irony is just brilliant. The more chaotic and overwhelming the macro world gets, with the bizarre heat wave downpours outside and the GitHub repositories turning into automated landfills online, the more comfort Aang finds in the microscopic analog control of a styrofoam box on a balcony.
As Aang writes, these hyper-specific activities build skills and create a sense of accomplishment. They are anchoring rituals. The phone box isn't just about fish. It represents a controllable sphere of reality.
It really does. And the journal also mentions a commitment to decluttering exactly one item from the house every single day and taking the time to cook highly specific, simple meals, like soft-boiled eggs, cooked salads, and miso noodle soup with vegetables.
Cooking a soft-boiled egg is the perfect example of that tactile presence. You have to watch the clock, monitor the boil, and immediately shock it in ice water.
It pulls you out of the abstract anxiety of your brain and forces you to interact with the physical reality of your kitchen.
Right, and decluttering one item a day is the exact same philosophy. It's incremental tweaking applied to physical space. It's continuously asserting agency over your immediate environment.
So when you look at the entirety of this mid-year review, the philosophy becomes clear. The goal of the quantified self, the purpose of all this tracking, isn't to turn yourself into a flawless, unfeeling machine that hits 10,000 steps and perfectly balances a 2-on-1 diet ratio every single day.
Not at all. The goal is to gather enough data to understand your own unique human nature. You track the failures to learn your environmental triggers, your physical needs, and your breaking points, so you can build a life and a microclimate that actually accommodates you.
So missing that 2-1-1 diet ratio because you were stuck at an airport without good food options, or dropping to 6.1 hours of sleep because you got deeply inspired by a complex Haskell coding puzzle, these aren't failures.
No, they are the raw, necessary data points required to make the next incremental tweak.
They are proof that you are a human being negotiating with reality, not just executing a script.
It fundamentally changes the relationship you have with your habits. It asks you to replace self-criticism with self-curiosity.
Which is such a powerful shift. So, for everyone listening, take a look at your own daily life. What are the metrics, the habit trackers, or the to-do lists that you constantly beat yourself up over? Your daily screen time, your sleep score, how often you cave and eat takeout.
Right. How could you shift your mindset today to view those so-called failures simply as neutral data?
Data that helps you understand how you react to your environment so you can adapt, rather than just carry around guilt.
Once you understand the mechanism behind the behavior, the guilt simply dissolves into strategy.
That is so true. But before we wrap up this deep dive into Aang's mid-year review, I want to leave you with one final, slightly provocative thought to mull over on your own.
Let's hear it.
We've talked extensively about how meticulously tracking your sleep, your diet, and your hobbies reveals the hidden patterns of your behavior. But think about the psychology of the journal itself. If you were to document your days exactly like Aang does, knowing that at the end of the week you had to write a highly detailed week in review, would that knowledge actually alter the choices you make on a random Wednesday afternoon?
Well, that's a good question.
Does the observer effect apply to our own lives? Does the very act of watching your habits inherently change the habits themselves? Something to consider the next time you log a data point.